Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a reading vlog. I either forgot to film an intro to this or I mistakenly deleted it. I wouldn't put it past me. Past Jennifer, she doesn't often do future Jennifer many favors. So I am coming back to introduce the vlog. And this was a vlog in which I envisioned reading 5 books in 5 days. I didn't quite hit 5 days. I managed around 4 days, which is still a success. I recently hauled 5 books that I was really excited about, and all of them were books that I felt were great transition reads into the autumn season. And so that's basically what the theme of this vlog is. I just want to get into the spirit. I wanted to get into autumnal reading. But I didn't get to 5, I got to 4, and that's okay. We're celebrating small successes. And they were all, spoiler alert, books that I really enjoyed. And so what really inspired this vlog was a book that I was technically already in the middle of. And so I started it in the morning, I made it a good way in, and I thought, I'll probably finish this one today. So maybe I could do 5 books in 5 days. And that's A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I own this book physically. I have no idea where it is. There's many different places it could be, but I, for some odd reason, thought that I left it in a place where it made sense, and I didn't. But this is what started the vlog. A Deadly Education is a dark academia fantasy book where the school is trying to kill the students. I was feeling a bit meh by the time I started this reading vlog. About halfway through, I was kind of wondering what the point of this one was. I think a lot about this book is that it's technically genuinely just about that kind of tagline, that this is a school that's trying to kill you. That's basically all the book is. And if you like that, then I think you're in for a pretty good time. This is some decent writing from Naomi Novik. But the other books on my TBR, Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh. This is an unhinged historical fiction that really took me on a ride. And I think this one is fascinating. I'm really glad that I was filming a vlog while reading this, actually, because I felt like I had a lot of thoughts. But it's weird. It's like I started tabbing and then for some odd reason, I never carried on. I really don't know why. Because this really had some interesting thematic content, and I do kind of wish I had annotated it more. But this is my first Ottessa Moshfegh. Won't be my last. Vespertine is one of the ones that inspired this vlog as well, because this is a standalone fantasy that is about ghosts. It's set in a French-inspired world with nuns. Say no more. There's kind of a Joan of Arc vibe to this. This is kind of the ideal book to switch from summer to autumn reading to me. So this is one that I definitely wanted to get to very quickly, and I'm glad that I got to it in this vlog. And then we have Bunny by Awad. I have so many thoughts about this, and all of them are good. So that was my TBR. I did originally want to include Slewfoot, which is a book that I also hauled recently, and I wanted to do 5 books in 5 days. As with everything on my channel, when I try to do a reading project, that was a failure. But we're gonna celebrate our wins. I did manage to do 4 books in 4 days, kind of. I kind of cheated a little bit, but that's okay. I hope that you enjoyed this vlog. I had a lot of fun with this. All of these books were really great to kind of get into the autumn spirit. And so now I'm just ready to read more autumnal books. I'm ready for Booktober, but that is my TBR. Good morning. I finished the book that I was in the middle of, so day 1 was a success. And that was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. And you may can tell from my tone, I was fairly disappointed in this. And I want to say my feelings on this are not 100% negative the way that they have been in the past with Naomi Novik's other books. Most of the time, I just genuinely dislike her writing and I genuinely dislike her characters. But in this case, I thought the writing was really rather charming. I really thought it was inviting. I thought the world building was at least semi-interesting, but nothing interesting was done with it, if that makes sense. I guess I went into this thinking that we were gonna build into something and there was going to be a point to the school trying to kill them. And yet that's all the book ever was. It never developed into a more interesting plot. In fact, really in the end, what was the plot? I guess the plot was just to survive the school. This is one of those books that is exactly what it is described as on the tin, which is that this school is trying to kill them and the book is them trying to survive. Now I thought that was just kind of the baseline of description for the entire series, but I assumed it was going to have like an overarching plot, like maybe there was a goal in mind. No, really, the entire book just felt like we were moving from day to day, just trying to vaguely survive. Something that really did bug me concerning the world building was all of these different monsters are mentioned, all of these different Malias, what they call them, these things that are in the school trying to kill them. They are never really described. They're just given a name, and I think it's kind of assumed that you, the reader, are going to have a conception of what she's talking about. Occasionally, it's described what the monster does, and specifically what it would do if it gets you, which I think does kind of give it a little bit more context, but for the most part, you're just spitting out names and words that we, as the audience, have no context for. We don't really know what you're referring to, and so to me, I'm trying to wonder like what's going on. I'm trying to visualize what's happening. And I think in general, that was a lot of this book. A lot of this book felt theoretical to me. There's a lot of description about the school being in some place called the Void. So it's like not technically here in the real world. And if you leave the school and you enter the Void, here's what's going to happen to you. The school, essentially like Hogwarts, has the ability to change rooms. The stairwells will change. It will adapt. And that to me was very theoretical, and it was kind of hard for me to envision. And then come to find out, last night when I'm finishing this book, I get to the end. They have an entire map of this place. I'm left scratching my head as to why that was at the end of the book. Why was that not in the first couple of pages? Because that really would have helped me. I felt semi-disappointed in this yesterday when I was about halfway through, but really the ending to me made it worse. I felt like at least the ending was hinting at something more interesting occurring in the other books in the series, but it's like it waited such a long time to introduce any kind of element that you felt was intriguing or that you really wanted to carry on with. And so to me, this was disappointing, but it's still actually my favorite book that Naomi Novik has ever written. I just thought the voice here, the authorial voice, was really cozy. And that's one thing I do have to say for it. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars just because I really enjoyed spending time in the main character Elle's head. Something that I think would really bug other readers about this, and actually got to the point that it really bothered me, is the info dumping. And I'm someone who's normally like, just give me the information. I don't really care if you would consider it an info dump or not. I think it's valuable to have the information, so I don't necessarily care how that's conveyed to me. This entire book is us being inside Elle's head and her going on for pages at a time, I mean this with no exaggeration, pages at a time of inner monologue of her telling us and explaining everything about the school. The entire book, in a way, could kind of be described as an info dump, and I think it was interesting, and I think I enjoyed what I learned from the info dumping, but some of that could have been conveyed in other scenes. And I think possibly this is actually a case where I think it would have been beneficial to have it start at the beginning when everyone is getting to the school. We started in the middle, and I think that meant she had to info dump to give us any pertinent information. And I think if we had come in with the characters and we were exploring the school for the first time with the characters, I actually think that would have been more beneficial to me as the reader. I don't know if I would have enjoyed it more, and I think that might have skewed it a little bit more towards the middle grade realm. I don't know why I labored under the belief that this was set at a college, but I firmly believe this was with older characters, and this was definitely YA, which I think is interesting to talk about in terms of Naomi Novik's writing, because I thought this was the most polished and the most lyrical that her writing has ever been. In fact, it's the only time I've enjoyed her writing. And yet this is her only young adult series to my knowledge. But her adult books to me felt poorly written at times. And maybe that's because this one was first person. She took a little bit more time and care, and she paid a little bit more attention to the prose style here. But the first book, I'm gonna say, I mean, I guess is a success because I finished it. I still really enjoyed it. But in a year where I have read more 5 stars than I have anything else, I really think the books that are mid are really sticking out to me as mid to almost bad, actually. So this is one I'm excited to kind of move on from. I don't know that I will carry on with the series. I think I might DNF the series. It'll depend. I think a lot of people have said books 2 and 3 are so much better than book 1, but we'll see. So it's day 2. I'm gonna move into Lapvona. I think Lapvona will be very different in tone to this, and I think something like Vespertine or Slewfoot will be better a little bit more into the week, because I think those will be fast and pacey reads that'll really keep me going. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm excited to start day 2. Okay, good news. I am halfway through Lapvona. I have made it a good ways in, and I think we're going to be able to keep on track with this with 1 book a day, because this book is only 300 pages. It's a lot shorter than what I thought, but I am having a lot of interesting feelings. And in fact, if you want my honest opinion, I think Lapvona will probably be the most interesting book that I'm reading for this vlog. I think of the 5, I think it's going to have the most to say. This book is fairly hated. I think even if you like Ottessa Moshfegh, this one does not rate that highly for you. I think this is a lot of people's least favorite of hers, but I'm gonna be honest, this is technically my first Ottessa Moshfegh, because I put down a year of rest and relaxation last week, not because I wasn't enjoying it, just because I wasn't in the mood. And this one really appealed to me more, and I'm going to be honest, I'm enjoying it. Yes, the book is gross. I want to get that out of the way. I think a lot of people who were giving this negative reviews have talked just about how in your face it is and how utterly disgusting the book is. Yeah, the book is gross, but to me, this kind of functions in a similar way to a horror novel. I don't necessarily know if that's the way Ottessa Moshfegh would describe this book, but to me it definitely has a horror quality. And in fact, that's one thing I want to say for it. I think the book wants to be a lot of different things, and so far I think it is all of those things brilliantly. The book is historical fiction, the book is literary, and I think the book is horror. This is set in a fictional medieval town, and it's following lamb farmers, Jude and his son Merrick. Merrick is technically the main character. He's not that interesting to me. And if you want to know the truth, neither is Jude. I hate Jude, and I'm kind of waiting for something to happen to him. This is a book where in general no one is likable, but you still feel like you have a really good handle on the characters and you understand how they would act in a given situation. I think something that I do want to complain about with this is just the discussion of religion, which I feel is fairly one note. There's a lot of discussion in this about Jude and Merrick being very pious, so to speak, and they want to be punished when they step out of line. And that's kind of tumbled over into a verge of sexual pleasure for them, let's say. So there's a lot of like flagellation, whipping yourself. And then Merrick constantly kind of steps out because he wants his dad to punish him. And his dad is abusive. Honestly, he is, but he wants that. That's not necessarily the problem, because that for sure was going on definitely in the medieval period when that was really promoted. But I think what I really don't like is kind of the one note discussion that they're doing all of this for nothing because God isn't real and religion is meaningless. But I do think some of it is really interesting because religion occupied so much of the medieval mind and so much of just in general medieval lifestyle. And this book has done something interesting in that they are very pious, the 2 main characters, but they've never actually been to church in the town. And the father, the priest of the church, is someone who just hasn't even read scripture because he can't read. And so he also is willfully using power over the villagers. I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of saying stuff that we all know to be true, that the rich take advantage of the poor, that people who are in elite positions of power are manipulating those who are beneath them. But I think it's all done very interestingly. I don't necessarily think it's breaking new ground, but it is very interesting to me. I don't necessarily think this is a book you can say is badly written. I really do think she is a very skillful author. For me so far, that's easily the most enjoyable part about it. I'm really just enjoying reading her writing. And I think a lot of what she wants to do has been done. And I think it's fairly clear that she's a very talented author. I don't necessarily think you can call the book bad. I think it's whether or not you enjoyed it. And since there is a lot of gross stuff in it, I think it's fair to say that you probably don't enjoy it, but I think what she has set out to do, she has achieved, and I really do want to applaud that. But yeah, the book is gross. Now, if you've read any sort of horror book, this one is not even going to register to you, honestly, but I think a lot of people came into this truly as literary fiction readers. And I think this is an interesting book because would any of us have picked it up if her name wasn't on it? I don't know that we would have. Now, I'm someone who's kind of in the historical fiction scene, and I love something that you would market as literary historical fiction specifically. I think this falls under that umbrella, and I probably would have picked it up because it is not only literary historical fiction, but it's literary historical fiction set in the medieval period. And you could also call this horror. And so all of those are buzzwords for me. So definitely I think I would have picked this up, and it's probably why I'm enjoying it. But I do think the characters are really despicable. I think a lot of really needless, gross things have happened, things that have not really added to the lore of the book. One of the big themes is motherhood, and Merrick as a young child not having a mother, and so nursing for much longer than what you might think. And that's definitely a big theme in this that I think is pretty gross, is just all of the discussion of motherhood. And I think it's interesting. I think there's a purpose to that, because though it is horrific, it's also something that these men are striving for, that they don't have women around them. And so I think there's a point to those scenes. But some of the other gross scenes to me were just there to offend you, or just to make you uncomfortable, let's say. And so that definitely is achieved. I was uncomfortable reading a lot of this first part, and I suspect that the second part will be worse. But just doing things for shock value, that's never really worked that well for me. But personally, I'm really enjoying this, and I kind of think it's going to be my favorite of the 5. Bunny might sneak up on me, but right now I feel like this is the one that I'm going to have the most to say about, and I'm really enjoying the experience of reading it. I know you just saw me in this sweater like 2 or 3 days ago, but the weather has been up and down, and so sometimes it feels like it's extremely cold in here, and sometimes it feels like it's extremely hot. It's been 100 degrees this week. It's been 75. We don't know. So I did finish Lapvona, and I want to say I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I have so many questions about it, and a lot of them are just about people's reaction to it, frankly. I'm going to say, yes, the book was weird. Yes, it did feel like, in parts, there was probably no point to what was going on, but at the same time, I don't necessarily feel like it was as strange as other people made it out to be. A lot of people talk up just how disgusting it is. To me, there were maybe 4 or 5 scenes that I can think of throughout the entire course of the book that I truly thought were disgusting, that I thought were not worth reading. And in many ways I felt were pointless. That's kind of a hard thing to say, and I'm trying not to critique books on scenes that I think are pointless anymore, or that I think don't add anything, because that is a very weird definition, and that could vary reader to reader. Something that to me feels needless could be something that's really imperative to someone else's enjoyment of the book. And I think sometimes it's valid to put something in a book that doesn't necessarily have a plot payoff. The scenes that I mentioned, though, to me were placed into Lapvona truly just to make you as the reader uncomfortable. And I do think they achieved that. To me, the characters here wound up falling a little bit flat. I feel like so much of the first half of Lapvona was really focused on character development, and we got so many characters in such a short amount of time. Then the second half, we got more perspectives from different characters that had been mentioned, which, again, I'm going to say, I don't necessarily feel like we needed. To me, in some ways, they were more enjoyable than the earlier characters. But to me, the main characters of the first half of the book and of the second half of the book were not the same. And there was likely a really big point to that. And I feel like there were a lot of things going on thematically that I probably just wasn't catching as well. But for me, I really enjoyed this. Is it my favorite book of the year? No. Is it even going to be my favorite Ottessa Moshfegh? Probably not. But this is one that has just kind of left me perplexed in terms of its reception. It seems like people just viscerally disliked this. And the positive reviews seem to celebrate the fact that the book really got them outside of their comfort zone, really made them uncomfortable. I really thought the elements here that kind of read like horror, they were so good. They were so special. To me, the book would have been better if it had leaned into that just a little bit more. If it had just been straight up a medieval horror book, I would have loved it. As it stands, I still really enjoyed it. I think it, alongside Bunny, are going to be the ones that I think the most about post-vlog, but I have gone on and started my next book. That's Vespertine. So I started this last night, so I'm technically cheating just a little bit because we did reading sprints over on Christy Lewis's channel and I was open. So I could start any of the 3 books that I have remaining. And this is the one that I picked up because she also has this out from the library and I thought it would be kind of fun to read it and then her read it, know what she's thinking about it. This is a standalone fantasy set kind of in a French-inspired world that has to do with keeping the dead dead. So there is a magic system that has to do with ghosts and also has to do with saints and relics in this French world, which I think is really interesting. I think is fascinating. The book in many ways reminds me kind of a retelling of Joan of Arc, because the main character is kind of inadvertently discussed as being a saint. There's even a scene where she's like hit with a crossbow bolt and people are suddenly selling the bolt throughout town like, this touched her, this has her blood on it. And very famously, Joan of Arc was hit in the neck with an arrow. So there are shades of Joan of Arc here that I'm really enjoying, but this is just so much fun. And I'm gonna be real with you. Right now, to me, this is my favorite book of the vlog, and I think it's going to be one of my favorite books of the year. Honestly, I'm just having a great time. This is really lighthearted. It's really funny. I think the characterization is really interesting. For the most part, we have stuck very closely to our main character, and there are only a few side characters. It's really interesting because in many ways, the book is not what I thought it was going to be. I associate Margaret Rogerson with kind of fantasy romance, and so far, that has not been a plot element here. But the medieval vibes here really are interesting because it's fun to compare this to the book that I just finished in Lapvona, because Lapvona was discussing so many of the same themes, sometimes in a more blatant way than this book, which I think is interesting. I associate literary fiction with kind of doing things underhanded a bit, and YA I would expect to be more blatant, but I feel like these 2 books are discussing the same things. Sadly, the one thing I have to say halfway through this is that I kind of hate that it's a standalone. I always feel bad because I feel like I ask for more standalone fantasy, but then I feel really bad that an author put in all of that work and time into the world building. And so I feel bad that the world building was only done for a single novel. And to me, the world of this is so interesting. But I really like the idea of just a one and done, and I really respect a book that can get everything done very quickly, which is apparently what this one is going to do. I have read this very fast, so I did kind of cheat. I started this last night, so I do want to get this finished before tonight at the same time in order to keep everything on trend and really be finishing this in a day. I think I can do it because I'm really flying through this. It is so much fun. I think I've read one other book by Margaret Rogerson. I remember enjoying it, but I don't really remember loving it. So it's fun to have found one that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. So I'm glad that I included this in this video. Please don't ask me why my face is this red because I actually don't know. It's really, for once, not that hot outside. So I really don't know what I'm going through today. But Vespertine was achieved last night. I definitely think I got it done in time, like in a 24-hour period, which was kind of the ultimate goal. Day is very loose, but easily to me, Vespertine is the highlight of this vlog. I actually don't think anything else is going to beat it because Lapvona was a really interesting experience. A Deadly Education was actually a disappointing read for me a little bit, and I just think that Vespertine has everything that I love. I just think that it was meant for me, and I think it was actually the ideal book to be reading kind of across an autumnal week. I think it was the perfect autumn book. I picked all 5 of these because I thought they were going to help me transition into fall reading. I thought they all had a very autumn vibe, but that one is definitely the one that I really feel had the autumn vibe. It really had it all. But something I'm gonna say about Vespertine, and I don't know if this is gonna turn some people off or not, and in a way, I do kind of wish this had been present, but Vespertine had no romance. There was no romance subplot at all. The funny thing is, I was reading the entire book wondering when it was going to come in, and I actually wanted it to happen in a couple of cases. And so it was interesting to me that the book never went there. I think that really made it unique. But I actually think a romance would have strengthened it, and it would have pushed it to a 5-star for me. But right now it's a 4. It's definitely my favorite of the blogs so far, and I think it will remain my favorite. But I have started the book that I think is going to mean that I fail this challenge. I don't see how I'm going to read this one in a day. And that is Bunny by Mona Awad. I don't think this is possible. I don't think it's possible in a 24-hour period. I don't know. We'll see. We'll give it a go. The text here is genuinely minuscule. Like, genuinely minuscule. And so far, this is similarly bizarre to All's Well. I just recently read All's Well by Mona Awad, and I was obsessed. I loved it. And it was kind of instantaneous for me. This one has taken a little bit to get up off the ground, in my opinion. This is a dark academia book. It is a lot of people's favorite dark academia book, and it just in general is a lot of people's favorite book, period. But something fans of this book will tell you is that you're not going to get everything right off the bat. You're not going to get this in the first read. This is a book that you have to read multiple times. And I sometimes think there's something pretentious about saying that, like, oh, you're never going to get it the first time. But I actually genuinely see it so far with this book on page 60. I can definitely see that the language, the symbology, there's a lot of questions for me already so far where I'm wondering, is this real, or is this real in the way in which the character is conveying it to us? And so I think there's probably going to be some big reveals towards the end where we understand some of what was actually happening. And so this is probably a book that will be incredibly rewarding the second time through. So this is one I might cheat a little and give this 2 days. I think that's really cheating. Let's give it a go. We'll see if I fail. And if I fail, I'll just stop here. Okay, I'm coming to you with shame. I mean, pride does cometh before the fall. It's days later, okay? It is days later, and I'm still not halfway through Bunny. This was not the ideal book for a challenge like this, I'll say. There was just so much going on, and I knew I would probably fail this challenge the second we got into the actual week, because a lot of times during the work week, there are days that I just don't read at all. I used to read on my lunch break, but I don't anymore. And a lot of times in the evenings, I find I don't have time to read. So I knew that this would probably fall off. But I also just think Bunny is a really intense read. There's just a lot happening in this, frankly. And so I think I probably shouldn't have picked it for a challenge like this. The reason that it's not just 1 or 2 days late that I'm updating you is that something has literally happened every night this week. So a couple of nights ago, I talked to one of my besties who moved to New York a few months ago. I talked to him for 3 hours, and that really improved my mood. In fact, I feel like my whole entire mood has been up this week. I think the last vlog that I posted, I was really down, and now I'm really up. Anyways, a regression to the mean. We'll get back to normal soon, but right now I'm feeling really good. So I got to talk to him, and I also scored the boots that everybody wants from Target this fall. Baby, I got them. I got them. They only had my size, and I got them. And I'll insert a picture here. I should have shown them to you. Literally, I put them on when I got them yesterday, and I felt powerful. I felt unstoppable. I felt like I could do anything. And I was like, this is what the girlies are talking about. That's why everybody wants these boots. And it's true. And I feel like all of this weirdly goes hand in hand with Bunny. So Bunny is in a way about friendships. It's also in a weird way about boys. And I said, I think when I picked this up, maybe when I hauled this in my last vlog, that somebody finally did an entire plot breakdown of this, an actual summary of this one time, and they said this could be compared to Frankenstein. And it absolutely can. And I actually feel like comparing it to Frankenstein is a bit of a spoiler. I think that's basically what the whole entire vibe of this book is, but there's so much discussion of fashion and like what the bunnies are wearing. They're very coquette. So me wearing pink doing this update, I'm feeling like a bunny. And the actual animal, the bunny, figures into this quite a bit, which I'm kind of happy about. This book is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. And I think I mentioned in the first clip where I was talking about this that I really think it's a book that you're going to have to read twice to understand. I definitely feel that, because this is in some ways thematically similar to All's Well by Mona Awad that I also read. I read that in like last week's vlog, I think. There was a tone to that book that was basically, is any of this real? Or is it real in the way that it's being told to you? Because both Bunny and All's Well are first person. And so you're constantly living in somebody's head that you would call, I don't know, unhinged, unstable maybe. And so you're constantly questioning everything that is going on in this. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's brilliant. This is so well written. Honestly, the dread that it has inspired in me is so incredible. I just absolutely love it. At this point, do I love it as much as All's Well? I feel like automatically I had an instant like for the main character in All's Well. I think I really understood her, and this main character, Samantha, she has been far harder to read in my opinion, and I know that that's intentional, but to me she almost has no characterization. She's just very bland and one note compared to the bunnies. So the baseline of what this is about is that there is a group of girls at her grad school that call each other Bunny, and she essentially has multiple classes where it's just her and this group of girls. One day they invite her to come and hang out with them, and from there she's kind of one of the group. And so there's kind of like a Mean Girls element to it. There's a cult-like element to it. I cannot express to y'all how much I love this. And when I first started it, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get why this is one that people have become really attached to. Why is this something that has really captured kind of our cultural zeitgeist here on booktube? I mean, this is a book that people have been talking about ad nauseum for a couple of years now. And so I really was curious as to what it was about this one that was so electrifying to people. I know, I get it. I feel like by design, this book is by a woman for other women. Like, I think it really taps into the weirdnesses of girlhood, and especially kind of the grad school age when you're a little bit unsure of what you're doing. And I think there's something special about that. I felt like that was there in All's Well, and I feel like it's really on display here. I cannot wait for Rouge. I pre-ordered it. I'm halfway through this and I pre-ordered it. I'm going to save my final thoughts on this. I know this is kind of the bad thing to do, but I'm not going to finish it in this vlog. I think I will finish it, and then I might do an individual review on it, because this has really got me percolating. I mean, this is fascinating to me. There's like a scene in here where she has mentioned she had a crush on a guy in high school who didn't know anything about her, had nothing to do with her, and he shows up, and it's implied, of course, that the bunnies went and got him. This happens very early on, and she doesn't even question, like, why is he here? But she still wants him. And so there was this whole conversation about, like, the one who got away, or finally utilizing your own power over people who have ignored you in the past. And I just think it's really interesting. And that is just one of the most interesting themes altogether for me. I'm loving this. She is a new favorite author for me. I'm obsessed with her. So I am going to end the vlog here, sadly enough, because I did fail. I really did want to do 5 books in 5 days, but 4 books across multiple days, I'm still going to count it as a win, because the others definitely were 3 books in 3 days. So I feel okay about this. This definitely got me in the autumn spirit, but I am now 100% turning over to Booktober reading. So this was a really great kind of last hurrah before my favorite reading event of the year. I would love to know down below if you have read any of these, what you thought about them. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.